Well, let's move to Lebanon or Lebanon slash Syria, where there's quite a bit going on at the border between those two countries, or at least has been for the past week or so, with its own implications for the region, major implications, I would say, for the region. And we are very happy to be joined once again by Dr. Anis Germani, who is a medical doctor, public health researcher, and political analyst. Anis, as always, thanks so much for being with us.
Hi, Eugene, Rania. Always here with bad news for you guys.
One day we'll have a very celebratory show, and we're going to bring on everyone from Lebanon and Gaza, and we're going to, I don't know, toast each other. But we appreciate you. Yeah, we appreciate you always being willing. So I guess, I think probably for a lot of people, they just see that things are happening between Lebanon and Syria. They may be hearing a little bit about shelling or fighting between the two. So there's a lot to get into, but maybe you could just give us a capsule view, Anis, like the 20,000 feet of what's been happening in the past couple weeks in terms of border clashes there at the Lebanese-Syrian border.
Okay, so, well, first, it is important to understand that the reporting has been scant on both incidents that I'm going to mention. The first one happened around January. There was, an HTS infiltration into Lebanon. There was a kidnapping. That was at a time when HTS was asserting its dominance on its border towns. So in Syria, this is where they kidnapped, if I remember correctly, 12 people that happened to be Lebanese citizens. And these Lebanese citizens were part of a group of people, so a tribe in Lebanon. And then, since nothing was done with the issue, there was also an infiltration by HTS into into the Lebanese territory. And then the tribe's people kidnapped those three individuals. Two of them were killed. And then they were traded back for the 12 kidnapped Lebanese citizens. Then a clash ensued. The clash was, actually quite violent. HTS used drones and missiles, and they shelled the border towns. But the tribesmen, who are in Lebanon known to be very well armed and very well trained, because they also participated back in the days when HTS under Germani, before he became, obviously president of Syria, they had occupied the border area between Lebanon and Syria. And then with a joint mission between the Lebanese army, Hezbollah, and these tribes people, they were able to liberate the area. So these people already know what HTS is and their military capabilities. So they fought them off this time in January 2025. Then again, 4 days ago, another incident happened. To this day, we still do not know exactly what triggered the issue. HTS and Germani claimed that there were Hezbollah elements that they went into Syrian territory, kidnapped somebody. We heard nothing of the issue. We don't know what happened. Like this alleged person that was kidnapped or killed, we don't know what happened to this person and who that person is. However, local sources mentioned that some HTS fighters came into Lebanese territory, tried to steal 3 sheep of all things, and then a clash ensued between the local population and HTS. Lebanese officials did not mention any kind of story. There is no Lebanese official story that explains what happened. In any case, again, fighting ensued. There was shelling, and the army at some point intervened 2 days later. So that would be like 2 days ago. The army allegedly intervened, and they implemented some kind of ceasefire. However, the following day, the mayor of that village, of the Lebanese village on the border town, said that HTS fighters have entered the Lebanese territory, or inside the village, and they are burning and looting the entire place, and the army is doing nothing about it. So then, the next day, the HTS retreated. The army went in. Some people were very upset because the tribes people were very much able to, defend their town by themselves. But they allowed space for the army to assert its own dominance, to do whatever they want under the under the umbrella of the state. But that apparently did not, go according to their expectations. And then the army tried to take away their weapons, the tribes people. They took some of them. Today, they sent them back. So it's obviously a mess, but what is clear in this entire thing is not the minutiae and the details and who did what, but that it seems that we are posed to go into like some kind of conflict with Giuliani. It doesn't seem like he is very much interested in having a normal diplomatic, non-violent relations with Lebanon.
Well, shocking that the former leader of Al-Qaeda wouldn't want diplomatic relations. Though, I guess I did think that he'd be too busy trying to establish his control over Syria to really be engaging in warfare with another country. It's quite shocking to see in many ways, Anis. And I wanted to ask, this comes after these horrific massacres that took place on the coast of Syria against Alawites that were quite sectarian motivated. And you have a lot of Syrians from minority groups who have, as a result, fled into Lebanon. And you also have the sort of pro-Al-Qaeda extremists in Lebanon, pro-HTS extremists, as what, I guess we could call them that, who were celebrating those massacres. And so I'm just curious, as we're talking about the sort of clashes between Syria and Lebanon, how these sectarian killings in Syria, which are probably going to be quite cyclical, I think, are impacting Lebanon and perhaps the potential they have for stirring up sectarian strife in Lebanon.
Yeah, well, we also forget Israel in the equation. I think Lebanon is going through a very dangerous time at the moment, through a conflagration of events. So first, there is definitely the fact that HTS is in charge of Syria now, and they're not interested in playing nice, which is obviously is not a surprise. Second, there is the fact that as I mentioned once before, that HTS did not take power, did not wrench it out. Like, they did not defeat the Syrian Arab Army. It's more that the Syrian Arab Army capitulated, and then Germani walked to Damascus and became de facto president, now dictator of Syria. But they required this violent, foundational moment, because in order to establish a state, you have to monopolize violence in a way, and they chose to exercise this violence on Alawites. This is the foundational moment of the new Syria, whatever it's going to look like. But it was basically done using the blood of the Alawites on the coast in Syria. And this is not some kind of random outburst. This is setting the tone for how new Syria is going to behave. And second, we have our own domestic issues in Lebanon, partly due to the sectarian system, partly due to the huge changes that are occurring in the domestic dynamic of power, and of course the foreign intervention that is so blatant. Never in the history of Lebanon has it been that blatant since probably the Lebanese Civil War. So there's that. And third, there is obviously the restart of the death machine in Gaza. This has changed a lot of things. So this means that, in a way, it's on the table that Israel might also restart its war on Lebanon, just as it did in Gaza, with no pretext, no alibi required, as long as if Lebanon is found not to be abiding enough or fast enough with some requirements, maybe by the U.S. administration. The threat is implicit. It doesn't have to be verbalized. And there were rumors in the past 24 hours that some threats have been verbalized. Witkoff, ended up denying some of them, not all of them. But the actions speak louder than words, and the actions are terrifying. So this is where Lebanon is now. We are basically an island that is being squeezed from all sides, and even from within. And if these events lead either to maybe, a wider conflict with Syria, that is a problem, because, as you said, there are supporters of HTS. Salafi ideology is quite powerful in Lebanon. We have a history of conflicts within Lebanon based on a Salafi ideology, and this ideology has been reinforced over time due to poverty and state neglect, and just the normalization of violence inside Lebanon. So this is something we do not disqualify. Already there were some minor clashes, not all out violence, but more like street violence that happened in Tripoli and in the north. This is obviously where you have Salafi individuals, and also this is also where there's an Alawite community where more Alawites moved since the massacre that happened in the Syrian coastline. So the fact that these two populations are living in proximity in the poorest area in Lebanon, this is bound to create a lot of problems, I fear.
No, it seems like it's a very complicated landscape. And I wonder where, this leaves. I mean, it's speaking to some of the same point and extension of maybe the point you're already making about the sort of internal unity, even in the existing government. I mean, of course, when the president came in, he was making a big point to the international media of we're going to bring everyone together. We're uniting people. We're going to defend the country against Israel, against all these other people. But it seems in many ways, that is just not the case. And certainly, I think many of the things that many people for many years said about the resistance, that they were doing more than the government to defend the borders and things like that, also, taking on a different cast now that we're seeing what's happening. So, I mean, how do you see this playing in that regards as it concerns the sort of, near future of the resistance forces who I think, obviously pulled back in the context of the ceasefire?
Well, I think Hezbollah is just laying low at this point. And as you said, maybe, of course, I have no inside information, but one analysis would be that, letting things happen, even the clashes at the border, could be a way for Hezbollah to show that, well, if you don't want me to act, I will not act at all, and then you will see if you need me or not. If you want the army to deal with it, I will support the army and let the army do its job. I will do nothing, and then we'll see. Let the results speak for themselves. This is maybe a way of handling things. Of course, for me, for somebody who lives in Lebanon, I am a bit worried because I know very well that the Lebanese army's capabilities are close to nothing. And even when they had the chance to prove, their some kind of military capability, at least against HTS, I mean, I did not expect them to show anything regarding, facing Israel, because we know the discrepancy is huge, but at least HTS, and they didn't do much. So of course they preferred to negotiate, which is a way, but also not at the expense of the local population, not letting HTS run rampant and loot people's houses and kill other people. So I mean, and at the same time, looking at the government, I mean, last time I was on your show, I was hoping at least that Hezbollah would be more engaged in the formation of this new government and how things are going. They did play ball, obviously, eventually, but looking at how things have formed, like from the formation of the government, from the appointments that they made, from the program that they adopted, from the budget that they ratified, it seems like it's going to be just more of the same. This is what we're looking at. They adopted the same program and the same budget of the previous Mikati government. And if you remember, they did this whole thing where they ousted Mikati and then they had Nawaf Salam in his place, only for the government to adopt the same program and budget, which says a lot about the future. Which means that not much is going to change. That's one thing, and then. And on the other, we look at the army and we look at their capabilities. We haven't seen much. Like, we haven't seen it. If truly the army is going to take Hezbollah's place, then in defending the border, at least, there should be massive investments in training and recruitment in the army. And this is something that we've heard nothing about.
Anis, I wonder, given everything taking place, I mean, it's a pretty bleak picture that you're painting, where Lebanon's basically surrounded. We know that the huge portions of the south have been completely destroyed. The closer you get to the border, in the south, the worse off the villages, and just like the border villages have been largely demolished, and people are pretty desperate to rebuild, but the U.S. and the Israelis are basically making it very difficult for Hezbollah to get money into the country to rebuild. They're trying to use that rebuilding as like a leverage against Hezbollah. And at this point, it's clear that Hezbollah has been weakened, and the Israelis just kind of have the freedom to do as they please in many ways, right? I mean, they've stayed at these 5 hilltop points at the border that are strategically located. They've taken huge swaths of land in Syria with little to no resistance, because HTS is busy massacring Alawites and starting border clashes with Lebanese tribal people. And on top of that, you have a situation where the loss of Syria makes it difficult to get weapons in. I mean, people are talking about the idea of, a future normalization not too far into the future between Syria and the Israelis. Where would that leave a country like Lebanon?
Well, it's hard to say. Well, first of all, the normalization between Syria and Israel is not set in stone. Second, the territorial integrity of Syria itself is not set in stone. Which Syria will be normalizing with Israel? Is it Jolani's Syria, or is it the Kurdish autonomous territory that has relations already with Syria, or is it the Suwaida governorate that Israel is planning on taking over completely? Like, what exactly are we talking about? Like, we still don't know on that front. Second, there's also, there is also Turkey as a player in this whole mess. Turkey obviously looks at Syria as the crown jewel of its expansionist ambitions, and they want it unified because Syria is only worth something if it's unified. If it's compartmentalized into small territories, it is completely useless. So this is when we might see some kind of antagonistic forces being taking place inside Syria, between Israel that wants to fragment Syria, between Turkey that wants to keep it an integral territory, and then you add into the mix the GCC. The Gulf countries that look at the Muslim Brotherhood in charge of Syria, and they are terrified because they've already faced some uprisings and problems domestically because of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they also want to antagonize. They also are competing amongst each other. So you have Qatar that supports the Muslim Brotherhood, Saudi Arabia that does not, the UAE also does not. They will not allow them to succeed, and they also do not want to see Turkey taking dominating the region. I mean, Saudi Arabia might be a bit relieved that Iran has taken a step back in the region, but now they look in fear. They see Turkey all of a sudden. Like, none of these things are pleasant surprises for anybody. So the GCC also, Saudi Arabia has been taking a stronger role, more present role in Lebanon, involving itself in all sorts of appointments and decisions. It's not very far off to imagine a future where Saudi Arabia might even have some kind of rapprochement, maybe with Hezbollah, in order to also antagonize and maybe contain, Jolani's ambitions, and also Turkey's from Lebanon within Syria, and maybe they might also be playing a role in reconstruction. So, it is way too soon to understand where things are going, and I think the restart of the full-blown genocide in Gaza has thrown the entire region into chaos, into a chaos that might become violent once again. After a whole year of all-out violence and destabilizing, today the region is already less stable, and we've restarted the mechanism of violence. So it's really hard to say how these forces might materialize into any kind of change, or even if change is possible in violence, and what the outcomes of this violence might be on Lebanon, on Syria, in Palestine, even in Turkey and the GCC. We still don't know, but all of these players are definitely involved, and everybody's scared, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot to keep following here, and we appreciate you helping us sort through it as always. Dr. Anish Germani, thank you so much for some of your time here on the Freedom Side.
My pleasure.